In late 1978, the Rhodesian War was entering its final chapter. 13 years earlier, on November 11th, 1965, Rhodesia had declared independence, refusing to commit national suicide as the world demanded. From that day, the country was locked in unending conflict. The early raids against Rhodesia were clumsy failures. They faded, then returned, stronger and more determined. Despite crushing international sanctions, Rhodesian forces repeatedly outmatched their enemies. Kill ratios of 10-1 were common, with elite units like the light infantry reaching 40 or even 50-1. Yet numbers told a harsher truth. The guerrillas could afford their losses. Rhodesia could not. Every single soldier mattered. By 1978, Rhodesia was still winning battles, but the pressure from abroad was suffocating. South Africa, together with Henry Kissinger, forced Prime Minister Ian Smith to accept a path to majority rule. A transitional government was created with Bishop Muzorewa, Reverend Sethole, and Chief Chirau. The security forces, however, remained under white command. Morale at home was faltering, emigration soared, and the world closed in on the small nation. Yet Rhodesia could still fight, and in 1978, its forces would launch their most famous operation. Rising Terror. The year began violently. On January 3rd, terrorists struck the Leopard Rock Hotel. Within days, civilians near Salisbury were ambushed and murdered, including 3 brothers aged just 16, 13 and 7. Their 10-year-old siblings survived only by playing dead. On January 12th, 15-year-old Colin Tilley was shot in the head outside Salisbury, killed before his father's eyes. For the first time, terror had reached the capital. The enemy's strategy was simple: avoid the army and target women, children, and the elderly. Yet defiance remained. That year, 15-year-old Jimmy Scott was ambushed on his motorcycle. Struck by 5 bullets, he still fought back with his rifle, saving his friend's life and earning the conspicuous Gallantry Award. Stories like Jaime's inspired a nation, but they could not reverse the tide. The enemy's numbers seemed endless, atrocities multiplied. The Elim Mission massacre saw 8 missionaries and 4 children butchered. Even Red Cross workers were killed. And yet on the battlefield, Rhodesian forces continued to dominate. In March, the internal settlement brought a coalition government. Some dared to hope that Britain would now recognise Rhodesia. Smith even met secretly with Joshua Nkomo in Zambia, offering him power. A deal seemed possible. Then came September. Flight 825. On September 3rd, Air Rhodesia Flight 825 lifted off from Kariba, bound for Salisbury. Families filled the cabin. Among them were Hans and Diana Hansen, travelling to visit friends. Unknown to the passengers, a ZIPRA missile team lay in wait. Minutes after takeoff, a Strela missile slammed into the Viscount. Fire tore through the wing. Captain John Hood and First Officer Jeff Beaumont wrestled desperately for control. Against all odds, they managed a crash landing in a cotton field. The impact was brutal, flames spreading quickly. Survivors fought to escape through holes in the fuselage. The Hansens helped drag children and wounded hostesses to safety. Diana, her skirt aflame, ripped it off and carried yet another child to the exit. In the end, 18 people survived the crash, but their ordeal had only begun. The crash site lay in tribal trust land, an area crawling with guerrillas. As night fell, ZIPRA fighters arrived, pretending to help. Instead, they ordered the injured carried aside and then opened fire at point-blank range. Among the murdered was young Cheryl Tilley, whose brother Colin had been killed earlier that year. Only 8 survivors managed to escape into the bush, hiding until rescue came at dawn. National outrage. The massacre horrified Rhodesia. Survivors testified that guerrillas executed the wounded and children without hesitation. When Joshua Nkomo admitted responsibility for shooting down the plane, then laughed during a BBC interview, fury exploded across the country. For years, Rhodesians had endured atrocities. Now, with the massacre of Flight 825's survivors, anger boiled over. Smith urged restraint. Clergy preached reconciliation, but the people demanded action. Memorial services filled the cathedrals, yet abroad the world remained silent. No condemnation came from Washington, London, or Rome. The Rhodesians decided to strike back. Plans were drawn up for a massive retaliatory assault. Operation Gatling. Operation Gatling intelligence pinpointed major ZIPRA camps in Zambia, Freedom Camp near Lusaka, housing Nkomo's high command, Makushi Camp, sheltering nearly 2,000 cadres, many of them women trained for combat, the CGT complexes, vast training grounds holding thousands more. The plan was bold. All 3 camps would be hit in a single day. Freedom Camp. On October 19th, 4 Canberra bombers and Hunter jets swept in at dawn. By chance, ZIPRA troops were paraded in the open. Hunters struck first, dropping bombs on the parade square. Seconds later, the Canberras released waves of alpha bomblets, carpeting the field. Hundreds were cut down instantly. Helicopter gunships then moved in, strafing survivors. Squadron leader Chris Dixon, callsign Green Leader, famously radioed Lusaka air traffic control, warning them not to interfere. Zambia's MiG stayed grounded. Freedom Camp was obliterated. Makushi. Later that morning, 165 SAS paratroopers descended on Makushi. The camp was taken by surprise. Many guerrillas fled, but over 400 were killed. The discovery shocked Rhodesian commanders. Much of the camp housed women trained for urban warfare. The plan, intelligence revealed, was to infiltrate them into white homes as domestic servants, ready to kill entire families on command. The operation had averted a devastating wave of massacres. CGT complexes. That afternoon, the RLI parachuted into the CGT training grounds. To their frustration, most of the camps had been abandoned, likely tipped off. Only a handful of caretakers were caught. Still, Rhodesians destroyed facilities and ambushed Zambian troops who stumbled into the area, killing 37 in minutes with no losses. One Rhodesian helicopter was downed, but it was the only loss of the operation. Aftermath Operation Gatling was devastating. Around 1,500 guerrillas were killed, with more than 1,000 wounded. Rhodesia lost just one man. Nkomo, once positioned to lead a new Zimbabwe, was politically finished. His reckless choice to target a civilian airliner had backfired spectacularly. Power shifted to Robert Mugabe, who would later turn on Nkomo's own tribe, killing 20,000 in the Gukurahundi massacres. For Rhodesia, the war was still unwinnable. International isolation and demographics sealed its fate. But in 1978, the security forces had their finest hour. Operation Gatling was retribution, swift, overwhelming, and unforgettable. The recording of Green Leader's calm, commanding voice became legendary. Joshua Nkomo had laughed when Flight 825 was brought down. After Operation Gatling, no one was laughing. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. It helps more than you know.